intelligent talk that's sure to raise the IQ. Here's Guy Wehman, Ben Brunson, and Frank Vernuccio inside the news.
Welcome back to our international segment of Inside the News. You're watching us on AUN TV, AUN-TV.com, or on YouTube. You can hear us on SoundCloud, and you can also enjoy us on many affiliates across the country. All right, Ben, let's get to you on this Hagia Sophia. This has been now turned into a mosque. It's been going back and forth as a Christian church and a mosque. And Erdogan of Turkey, he made a decision, didn't he?
He did. And so to really talk about this, I want to step back very briefly to the start of the modern Turkish state under Kemal Ataturk. He started the Turkish state, specifically set it up to be a secular institution, secularly run, even though Turkey was then and continues to be an overwhelmingly Islamic nation. Very intentionally, to make it a modern state, took the direction of having a secular government, secular judges, secular institutions. That is all being undone by President Erdogan and his administration, piece by piece. And Turkey is looking more like an Islamic republic and less like a Western democracy all the time. And this is the latest example of that. The Hagia Sophia was built as a cathedral in Istanbul. It is a beautiful building. It was the seat of the Eastern Orthodox Church for hundreds of years, and of course fell under Islamic domination and the Turkish Empire, the spread of the Ottoman Empire. And it has been respected on and off in the last 100 years as being a secular institution. It's not really been a cathedral, but there was the Erdogan government challenged that. They took it to the court system, and the Supreme Court of Turkey essentially ruled that the Hagia Sophia could become a religious place once again, and it was immediately turned into a mosque. And so this is another step away from the West, away from secular government, and towards an Islamic republic. And it's unfortunate for Turkey.
All right, for some of our newer viewers who have just joined us and have not been around very long, Frank, as far as history goes, wasn't that former Constantinople?
That's exactly right. And of course, it was the seat of the Eastern Roman Empire, which lasted up until the 14th century, until the Islamic invasion. I want to go into the other part of the Erdogan speech that no one seems to be reporting much about at all. In the same speech in which he talked about Hagia Sophia, he also talked about liberating the other great centers of Islam, one of which happens to be in Jerusalem. And he mentioned that his ultimate goal is to liberate that center as well. That's a clear statement that Turkey, which at one point was an Islamic state a secular state with an Islamic background, that nevertheless was quite friendly towards Israel. Turkey, under Erdogan, has now fallen into the rest of the Islamic extremist states, particularly Iran, which is looking for the destruction or invasion of Israel. This is a really dangerous turn of events, one which I think we're going to have to watch quite closely.
Yes, and if you recall in the proximity that Turkey is just above Iraq, and the Kurds are up there, and they've had some skirmishes with them, haven't they, Ben?
Well, yes, of course, the Kurdish minority population inside Turkey has had a long and really horrible history of oppression. They've sought some level of independence. They have a degree of independence in northern Iraq and certainly a small piece of Syria that's been carved out. And there's Kurdish population in Iran as well that suffers oppression there. But the Turks are at war with the Kurdish PKK, which is viewed as a terrorist organization even by the West. But the mainstream Kurdish elements are close allies of the United States. They helped us in both Gulf Wars. They have been instrumental in the destruction of ISIS. They've been really the key fighting force, buttressed by U.S. Special Forces and air cover. They were able to defeat ISIS, and they've been able to hold some of the advance of Islamic extremism in check. The Kurds are a combination of Muslims. They're majority Muslims, but there are a lot of Christian Kurds, and there's a lot of tolerance within the Kurdish community. So they've been a natural ally to the West. And unfortunately for Erdogan, they're a target and an enemy, and they're killed where they can be found.
You know something, Frank, and Turkey is important, not because of the NATO maybe significance there, but we have a base Incirlik, which is in Turkey as well. So it does pay a certain bit of significance to us here in the United States.
Yeah, and at Incirlik, of course, there's also nuclear weapons that are stored, so that becomes a pretty important issue as well. The question of where Turkey is going is a rather unique one. If you look at their policy, for example, of the Hagia Sophia, they've not only ticked off, I think, the Christian West, they've ticked off Russia as well. One of the facets of Putin's power, unlike his communist predecessors, is that he has paid homage, of course, to the Russian Orthodox Church. So Turkey has now offended the Russians as well as the West. I can't help but see the financial hand, to some extent, of China behind this. As China becomes more of a factor in the Middle East, as they've committed significant amount of funds to Iran, for example, I see this happening in Turkey as well. Perhaps not as well publicized, but I think it is there. And as Turkey ticks off the West, ticks off the United States, ticks off Russia, their source of influence and power is going to come increasingly from China, and that's a really dangerous step.
Boy, that's an interesting point there. Ben, in the last 45 seconds, your thoughts on what Frank was just mentioning about China.
It's a great point, and China will take advantage of any opportunity, any wedge it can find to gain influence. Just like Putin took advantage of the absence of U.S. influence in Syria to interpose his forces there. Keep in mind that Turks and Russian forces are fighting each other in two countries right now, in Syria and in Libya. They're on the opposite sides of both of those conflicts. So it's a particularly dangerous scenario, and it mix in that Turkey's whole alliance with NATO is at risk given their current attitude.
All right, that's going to do it for our international segment. We're going to be back. We're going to be talking about the election trail, what's going to go on. Will Marxism actually prevail in this? It's going to be quite interesting to find out. You're watching us on AUN TV, and thank you so much, our affiliates across the country. This is Inside the News. We're going to take a time out. We'll be back.
You're listening to Wehman, Brunson, and Vernuccio, Inside the News.